Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Mritangamaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Maharaj, कल की एक झलक देखी इसलिए अपना देर he gave a brief introduction. Today he will dive deep into Vedanta. So be prepared, Maharaj ji.
Om Yonda Pravisya Mama Vachamimam Prasuptam Sanjeevayadi Akhila Shakti Dharasudhamna Anyamscha Hasta Charanas Ravanatvagadin Pranan Namo Bhagavati Purushaya Dubhyam Sthapakaya Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Surupini Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha Sudhismriti Purananam Malayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Yesterday I was discussing two different approaches in understanding and comprehending Advaita. One is Tatastha Lakshana, the other is Surupa Lakshana. In Vedantic tradition, there is an important principle. When you explain any philosophical doctrine or idea, you should give Lakshanam and Pramanam. Lakshana Pramanabhyam Vastu Siddhi. It is very important. So the Lakshana of Brahman is this, a very simple way of explaining what Brahman is, defining it as the point of origination, the point of sustenance or existence, and the point of final dissolution. That's one way. The other one is to say what exactly it is. Satchidanandam asti bhadi priyam, astitvam bhaditvam priyatvam, like Madhusudana says in Advaita Siddhi. So one may ask this question. As I said yesterday, Brahman is beyond description, beyond definition, beyond verbalization, it is called. Verbalization means our attempt to explain in words. So, according to Vedanta, Brahman is anirvachaniya, vacha magocharam, beyond words, beyond mind, beyond conceptualization. And then the another important principle is that it is beyond verbalization. Verbalization pancha shabda pravurti nishedha means where none of our attempts to explain in words will work. It's beyond verbalization. When you try to explain something, describe something, there are different ways of describing it. So say jati, guna, sambandha, karma, etc. You may suppose you want to say something about something, you say it belongs to that category. Dravya, something so pratiksha. You may say it's like sun. There is no real comparison, but you get an idea of what it is. The implication is full of light. So you may explain a person as, for example, he's a musician, he's a gardener, he's a cook, means in terms of action. So karma, jadi, dravya, guna. A flower may be yellow flower, red flower, white flower, quality. Sambandha, he is my father, son, daughter, and so on. These are 5 different ways of trying to describe and explain anything in words. It's called Shabda Pravritti, Shabdanam Pravritti, the involvement of words. So Brahman is beyond 5 verbalization. As I was mentioning yesterday, the only Western philosopher who was actually a theologian who echoes this idea is Meister Eckhart. According to him, even to call Godhead, as he called, as Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, as a creator, is a blasphemy. Because any kind of description, any kind of verbalization amounts to a sacrilege. We are trying to explain something which is by its very nature inexplicable. So Vedanta tells you that Atman or Brahman cannot be explained. And meanwhile, I want to point out one important aspect here. The frequent practice that we find these days of translating Atman and Brahman as consciousness is absolutely ridiculous. Because consciousness is one insignificant aspect of Atman or Brahman. It is not Atman. I mean, Satchidananda means Sat, existence, Chit, consciousness, bliss, Ananda. Now, the word Sat is used only to deny the possibility of understanding as Achit. So, why do you call Brahman as the absolute existence? To remove the wrong notion that it is non-existence. For that, it is called existence. It is not existence itself. It's beyond existence, non-existence, verbalizations. It is neither existence nor non-existence. Because when you call something existing, means it is something coming into existence, which means it did not exist earlier. For which reason it may cease to exist sometime. So Brahman is called Sat or existence only to deny the possibility of mistaking it as something non-existent. Chit means consciousness. The word Chit is used to define Brahman only to deny or to remove the possibility of misunderstanding Brahman as Achit, Jada or unconscious. So consciousness being used as an equivalent to Atman or Brahman is philosophically wrong, spiritually wrong, and scripturally wrong. It's a very important point to remember. Consciousness has a definite, well-defined meaning in psychology. And that meaning is well established. It may have a slightly different meaning in literature. A philosophical concept in philosophy has got one connotation. The same word in language could mean something totally different. The word delete you use in a computer, it has got one meaning. That word may have slightly different meaning in language. Similarly, the word Sat is used to deny, to remove the possibility of interpreting Brahman as Achit. Consciousness or Chit is, it is consciousness. It is used only to deny, to remove the possibility of misunderstanding as unconsciousness. So also Ananda. Ananda only implies that it is not dukkha. So every word is used to deny the possibility of its being misunderstood as its opposite. That's why Asti Bhadi Priyam is supposed to be more appropriate and philosophically more accurate way of describing this indescribable. Again, Brahman is beyond description. If you describe something, you are putting it within one small structure of language, definitions and descriptions. That's why Brahman can only be implied or indicated, can never be explained. It is called Panja Shabda Pravritti Nishedha, beyond definition. Sarva Pramana Nishedha means it beyond all epistemological tools. Vedanta accepts 6 tools of epistemology: Pratyaksha, Pramana, Vamana, Arthavati, Anubalabdhi, etc. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Vamana, Shabda, Arthavati, Anubalabdhi. So these are the 5 definitions. According to Bhatta Mimamsa also the same. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Vamana, Shabda, Arthavati, Anubalabdhi. According to Prabhagara, only 5 pramanas. They don't accept Anubalabdhi. Like that, according to Mimamsakas, the differences are there. According to Indian materialists, only 1 pramana, that is Pratyaksha pramana. According to Buddhas, 2 pramanas, that is Pratyaksha and Anumana. Like that, there are differences. I don't want to go into details. The point is, Brahman is beyond description, beyond definition, beyond explanation, beyond any kind of epistemological tools. Then why are we talking about Brahman? Why do we read books? Why do we discuss? Only to remove the wrong notions that we have in our mind at the intellectual level, we use philosophy. Philosophy cannot take you to the highest experience. A philosophy can remove obstacles that stand in the way of your highest experience. It's a very important point. Bhashyakara says, Karmanishthayaha चित्तशुद्धिद्वारेण पुरुषार्थहेतुत्वं न स्वातन्त्र्येण ज्ञाननिष्ठादु स्वातन्त्र्येण पुरुषार्थहेतुः अन्यान् अपेक्षा. See from Gita Bhashya. Bhashyakara says any kind of activity with total dedication and without any selfish motive, it is karmanistha, can help you to make your mind ready. And when your mind is ready, then that mind is ready for jnana prati and moksha. But moksha is not the result of any kind of activity, because moksha is akaryatvad. Karya means effect, karana means cause. If moksha is the result of your activity, then moksha becomes, or liberation becomes, brahmajnanam becomes limited in time. It is caused by something. It is not vikarya, utpadya, samskarya, etc. There are many. That is a different subject which I am going to detail later. If you have got doubt, you can ask me at that time. I shall explain to you. Brahman cannot be produced, cannot be brought into existence through refinement, cannot be attained, cannot be reached. One may ask this question: if Brahman cannot be produced like a pot maker makes pot, if Brahman cannot be produced like you make curd from milk, that is samskarya, the pot maker is utpadya. If Brahman cannot be produced by, let's say, like you make oil from oil seeds, if Brahman cannot be obtained or attained by going from one place to another place, apya. So utpadya, samskarya, vikarya, apya. Brahman doesn't belong to any of these categories. So then why do we use scriptures? Why discussions? Because discussions and our activities, our life, guided by scriptural teachings, will help us to make our mind ready for eventually attaining jnana prati and moksha. Now this is the subject I am coming to. In Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, there are 4 Mahavakyas. Each Mahavakya belongs to one of the Upanishads. Each Upanishad is representing one of the 4 Vedas. Brihadaranyaka is from, it is a Shukla Yajurveda. It is Aham Brahmasmi. Tattwamasi, the Upadesha Mahavakya, it is from Chandogya Upanishad, Samaveda. Prajnanam Brahma is Aitareya Upanishad from Rigveda. And Ayamatma Brahma is Mandukya Upanishad from Atharvaveda. Now this is a very important point to understand. You know, I shall begin by again referring to Sri Ramakrishna's life. Everyone is familiar with that. Totapuri comes to Dakshineshwar and he finds Sri Ramakrishna as an adhikari, Uttama adhikari for Advaita. And then Sri Ramakrishna receives this Tattwamasi Upadesha Mahavakya. Immediately Sri Ramakrishna goes into Samadhi. This everyone knows. I am trying to explain that. Why did Sri Ramakrishna immediately reach the experience level of Tattwamasi Mahavakya? Tattwamasi Mahavakya is Upadesha Vakya. Upadesha means instruction. Tattwamasi. And immediately Sri Ramakrishna reached this transcendental state of Aham Brahmasmi, Jiva Brahmaikyam. He stayed in that Samadhi state for 3 days. That's how history goes. Now, what it means is this. Sri Ramakrishna was practicing spiritual disciplines all his life, right from his birth. Puja, meditation, praying to Divine Mother, singing bhajans. His mind was surcharged with the spiritual samskaras. This is called sadhana chatushtaya sampatti in Vedanta. Nitya nitya vastu vega, ihamutra phala bhoga viraga, samadhi sarka sambati mumukshuttum. When you first begin your spiritual journey, you first make a distinction between what is real, what is spiritually more significant, and what is relatively insignificant. You discard the relatively insignificant. And then you attain this Samadhi Shakka Sambhati, Shama, Dhamma, Uparadi, Diksha, Shraddha, Samadhana. Mental restraint, sensory restraint, inner concentration, contentment, withdrawal from all external objects of desire. All these you attain, means samadhi, sharka sambatti. Didiksha means sahanam sarva dukhanam pradigara purvam chinda vilaparakidam sadi diksha nigatiti. Bearing everything silently without reaction. So mind is always focused on nitya, what is eternal, what is absolutely real. And then all this should be fueled by a strong urge for spiritual development, realization, mumukshutva. Sri Ramakrishna was practicing spiritual disciplines all his life. So when he received Tattwamasi Upadesha Mahavakya from Totapuri, immediately it became an experience to him. For a normal person, this doesn't happen. When a person normally receives mantra diksha, any kind of upadesha, it doesn't immediately becomes an experience to him. He has to work hard, he has to consolidate his faith, discipline his life, and continue reminding himself of the spiritual truth, spiritual ideas, and then eventually he may realize the experience level. In Vedanta, this Sri Ramakrishna's experience is called Shabda Aparokshavad. Shabda Aparokshavad means the moment you get Tattwamasi Mahavakya or Shabda, immediately it will be felt as Aparoksha Anubhuti to the receiver. But this happens only to a person who is fully established in sadhana, chatushtaya sambatti, the four fundamental spiritual disciplines. Suppose every day you are driving from here to Amritsar, every day, it's imagination. Every day you are driving. If somebody asks you on the way, or maybe shorter distance from here to Haridwar, let us say, if somebody asks you on the way to Haridwar, have you seen that tree, that particular tree or something, a big tree on the way? Immediately you remember, because every day you're traveling up and down to Haridwar. So like that, a spiritual seeker who is fully established in spiritual disciplines, the moment he gets instruction, it becomes an experience to him. Tattwamasi Upadesha Mahavakya immediately became experience, anubhuti for Sri Ramakrishna. Just like when somebody tells you, on the way to Haridwar, there's a tree, immediately you'll remember, you don't have to again go to Google or GPS system. Immediately, because you know you're familiar with the terrain. Like that, for a highly advanced spiritual seeker, instruction alone is enough to produce experience. For others, they have to go through the other two Mahavakyas, Anusandhana and Lakshana Vakya. Mean they have to go on practicing, that is, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. These two Mahavakyas represent the interval between instruction and experience. Between Tattwamasi Mahavakya and Aham Brahmasmi, Anubhuti Vakya, there is Lakshana Vakya and Anusandhana Vakya. And this is from a spiritual perspective. Now the point is, Brahman cannot be explained. Brahman is our true nature. It is called Yat Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma. Paroksha means remote. Pratyaksha means immediate within us. We all know. This is Pratyaksha. This chair is Pratyaksha for him. Pratyaksha, within my sensory level. But maybe a distant place which I can't see is Paroksha for me. Brahman is not Paroksha because our own true nature. It is our true nature. But it is not Pratyaksha because it is not discerned, it is not perceptible to the senses and mind together. When you see an object, you are seeing it, you are perceiving it with the help of your mind and eyes. It is Pratyaksha. Brahman is not subject to sensory perception. It is our true nature. Therefore, it is immediate. It is our own true nature. Yes, Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma. This is a very important point. Remember. Now, you find the Upanishads some very interesting ways of explaining this. One of the most striking illustration is found in the Chandogya Upanishad. The 6th chapter is called Tattwamasi Mahavakya Vichara Prakarana. Means the chapter that discusses Tattwamasi Mahavakya. Tattwamasi instruction was given by Uddalaka to Shetaketu, his son and also his disciple. In the 14th Khanda, one section of a chapter, there is the story of Gandhara Purusha Drishtantaka, an illustration based on a person who belongs to Gandhara. Geographically, Gandhara is a region now between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Gandhara, not Kandahar, but somewhere between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Gandhara country. In ancient times, there were land routes between India's northwestern border and all the way right up to Persia. This is a very big, important center of Vedic learning in ancient times in India, you find. So, one man, this is illustration, the story. One man was walking, he was traveling through a forest route, forest path. He was going back to Gandhara country in today's Afghanistan after studying the Vedas in India. Now, remember the book belongs to around 3rd millennium BC, more than 5,000 years old. The book in the Chandogya, Samaveda. So on the way, he was ambushed by a group of robbers. And he was ambushed, all the possessions taken away from him. He was tied, dragged in a thick forest, blindfolded, and with a tape on his mouth, can't speak, can't make any noise, tied to a tree. This is a story, how the story goes. And the robbers went their way. Now, what should that man do? If he keeps quiet, everything is fine, he will remain within the thick forest and he will perish. But if a true spiritual seeker, he will make a lot of noise. He wants to come out of that miserable condition. So, when he made a lot of noise, being dragged into a thick forest, tied to a tree with a rope, blindfolded, but he could make some noise. So, one compassionate traveler who was familiar with this route, he was also maybe he was returning from Gandhara. And he heard this noise coming from the thick forest, the bushes. He came, he untied the ropes, liberated him, freed him from that miserable condition, brought him to the main road and told him, you are going back to Gandhara country, your hometown, you take this route. Edam dursam praja, edam dursa Gandhara. Take this route and you'll get back to your hometown. This instruction. Here, that pilgrim, the pilgrim who was ambushed is the spiritual seeker. And the road is a spiritual journey. And the thick forest, and all these unfortunate things represent his own prarabdha karmas. And his own bad karmas constitute the robbers. So because of this, what happened? He got entangled, imprisoned in this forest of human body. So we are all imprisoned according to Vedanta. We should get out of this. But for that, you need to express a strong desire to get out of this. If you are happy with this body, suffering and enjoying, that's fine. But in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Patanjali makes a very important statement. Parinama tapa samskara dukkaihi gunavrutti vishe virodhacha dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. Patanjali says, for those who are highly evolved, this world is not very satisfying. According to Buddha also, Sattvari Arya Satyani, dukkhameva, Patanjali says, dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. Vivekis, those who are slightly evolved, those who are not happy with money, food, roti, kapda, makan, for them, there is something much higher to be aspired for. Something higher. That's why you are all sitting here listening to this not a very entertaining discussion of Vedanta. Because there's a desire to look for something higher and transcendental. Otherwise, you are going for movies or something. So the point is, this poor man who was caught, imprisoned, dragged in the thick forest, he begins to make a lot of noise. That captures the attention of the passers-by, the gentleman who was traveling up and down. And he brings him to the main road and tells him, Edam Drisam Vraja, Edam Drisam Gandhara. Take this route, you can get back to Gandhara country. That compassionate, passionate traveler is a teacher. Every age produces those teachers. In the modern times, Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, they are all teachers of our own times. And of course, though their representatives are also trying to do the same work. So what happens is, a person who is familiar with this route, for him, the instruction itself is heard as experience. That explains the mystery of Sri Ramakrishna's experience. It's called Shabda Parokshawada. The other one, where you require a lot of time and effort and your own sadhanas, is called the Prasankhyanavada. Prasankhyanam means Dhyana Abhyasa. So in Vedanta, after Shankaracharya's times, three distinct schools of Advaitic traditions evolved. One is Vivarana Prasthana. It goes by the name of one important book written by Prakashatmayedi. It's called Panchapadya Vivaranam. Panchapadya was a great work written by Padmapada, who was a direct disciple of Shankaracharya. So based on Shankaracharya's own teachings, Padmapada wrote Panchapadya, and another person wrote, Prakashatmayedi wrote Panchapadya Vivaranam. The Vivarana Prameya Sangraha by Vidyaranya. Like that, there is one lineage and one hierarchy of great scriptural traditions. The other one is Bhamadi Prasthana. Bhamadi Prasthana goes by the name of Bhamadi Tika. It's a book written by Vajaspati Misra. Vajaspati Misra was almost a contemporary of Shankaracharya. So he said, no, the instruction does not produce immediate experience. After receiving instruction, every day you have to practice, you have to meditate, you have to do some puja, all the sadhanas. Eventually you get that experience. It's called Prasankhyanavada. That means, what actually means is, if you are not fully established in sadhana sadhushta sampatti, then it is important that after receiving instruction, you should continue your own sadhanas. Otherwise, you will not get experience. So both are in a way correct, two different approaches. The third stream is called Vartika Prasthana. It goes by the name of Brihadaranyupanishad Bhashya Vartikam by Sureshwaracharya. Yesterday I quote some statements from that Sureshwara. But Vartika Prasthana and Vivarana Prasthana merge into one practically. This is one important point. Second point I want to mention is this one. So anyway, Tattwamasi Mahavakya is Upadesha. Aham Brahmasmi is Anubhuti. After Upadesha, you have to go to the intermediary stage of Aham Prajnanam Brahma and Ayamatma Brahma. One important point I want to mention here is, there's a lot of misunderstandings about Advaita. That's something very interesting. First of all, one important misunderstanding about Advaita is, Advaita negates the world, denies the reality of empirical life and experiences. It's a very common misunderstanding. Often if you read anything, you find any superficial translations. You read, Advaita says the world is unreal. Absolutely wrong. When you just translate Jagat Mithya as the world is unreal, it is absolutely completely wrong. Why? The word unreal here, Mithya, it means Anirvachaniya, not Asat. So I explained this, but I want to go back to the subject again. Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, looks at the concept of reality from four different angles. One is the highest absolute reality, which is never born, it's always existing, it never goes through any of the changes. Sat Vikara Atita, beyond the six changes, coming into existence, then growing, evolving, then existing, growing, evolving, decaying and disappearing. That is Jayade, Asti, Vardhate, Viparinamade, Apakshede, Vinachidi. It actually goes back to Yaska's Nidukta, the first portion itself. 7th century BC, Yaska wrote this. Shankaracharya again re-emphasized this point. Brahman is beyond all these changes. Brahman is beyond all the three times, time concepts, present, past, present, and future. And Brahman is beyond the changes, Jagra, Swapna, Sushupti, Avasthatraya, Abadhita. Not in waking state, in dream state, and deep sleep state, it is experience are the same. It's one important thing. So the point is that is Paramarthika Satta it is called. So now when Sri Ramakrishna is in Samadhi state, where he is beyond this body consciousness, that is called Paramarthika state. When he comes back and asks for a glass of water to drink, he is trying to bring himself to Dvaita level, that is Vyavaharika. So drinking water is not unreal. Sri Ramakrishna is drinking a glass of water. You can see in the gospel. That is not dream. That is not unreal. You are sitting in the chair, not unreal. But the point is, you will not be sitting in the chair for all times, because after 7 o'clock you will go home. So what Vyavaharika Satta, empirical reality, Mithya, Maya, what it means is something which is not absolutely unreal, but not absolutely real. Not absolutely unreal, because we are experiencing it, but not absolutely real. Because to be called absolutely real is remain the same in the past, present, and future, is beyond all changes. So the point is, this world is real. Absolutely. Sometimes you find this world is like a dream. Remember, that also should be understood properly. It is used only in certain context. In the Brahmasutra Bhashya, Shankaracharya strongly denies this idea that the world is unreal. The world is totally unreal. The world is like a dream. You know where? When he refutes the Yogacharya system and Shunyavada, Nagarjuna Shunyavada. Nagarjuna was a great Buddhist philosopher. He wrote Mula Madhyama Shastra, Madhyamika Karika, Vigraha Vyavartani, two important books. Many books he wrote, but the most important Madhyamika Karika and Vigraha Vyavartani. They said is a dialectical work. The other one is more of the foundational book of Shunyavada, doctrine of emptiness. So Nagarjuna said everything in this world is essentially unreal. Nagarjuna's original teaching did not mean that. But what happened was, Nagarjuna lived in the 2nd century AD, 3rd century, 2nd AD. Shankara came in 8th century AD. So between these 400, 500 years, a lot of changes happened. So Nagarjuna Sunyavada came to be interpreted as kind of absolute nihilism. Something that denies everything. Shankaracharya says that's wrong. He said this world is real, but not absolutely real. That's an important point to remember. Again, Yogacharya also said that all external things are unreal. Only mind is real. Mindfulness, Satipattana Sutta and all that. What the Yogacharya, Dignaga, Vasubandhu and others, Vikyaptimatra, Siddhya, Vasubandhu and Yogacharya Bhumi of Asanga, they also argued that all external objects are unreal, only mind is real. Shankaracharya said no. External things are not absolutely unreal, but they are not absolutely real. That's the point. It's a very important. But then again, you find every day you can find in blogs or YouTube, some gentleman writing, I'm a doctor, I'm going to say something about Advaita. I'm an engineer, I'm going to write something about Advaita. When somebody introduces himself as an engineer and offers to do a surgery only, you will run away from him. But the point is, Vedanta is an open field. Anyone can do anything. You can find, especially the proliferation of the information technology. It becomes almost like a wild place, jungle Raj, you may call it in Indian language. What it means is, anyone can say whatever he wants on Advaita. But you can't do that with surgery, medicine, engineering, or anything. You need to study from a teacher who has studied from his teacher. That's why in Vedanta, there is an important principle you should remember, Yairime Gurubhi Purvam Padavakya Pramanataha Vyakhyata Sarva Vedanta Tan Sarvan Pranadosmeham. So at the beginning of any traditional Vedanta discussion, especially when you teach scriptures, first you should You should pay tribute to this eternal, this long lineage of teachers, their students, and their students. That means because they have produced this great hierarchy of teaching. That is true everywhere. You can't go to a university and seek admission for studying physics, say that Einstein was totally wrong. You won't be allowed inside the college or university. So also, but in point is, in today's world, Vedanta has become accessible for everyone. Say whatever he wants. He say Shankaracharya was wrong. I'm right. I don't want to go into the detail, but it's absolutely has become worse than COVID-19 in modern times. But that's why there is on the one hand a sense of sanctity and sacredness in all tradition. Not only, as I mentioned earlier, in medicine, the great medical scientist, a great physicist like Einstein, because he studied under a great physicist, he became a great physicist. Like that, in any science, this ancient tradition, what we call, Yasya deve parabhakti, yatha deve tatha guru, tasyede kadidakhyartha, prakashande mahatmanaha. So, in Vedanta, there is this lineage, this hierarchy of great traditions. Again, yesterday I mentioned earlier, but I want to say something about it. It is not peculiar to our own times. Even Ramanujacharya, who revolted against Advaita, and Madhvacharya, who did same, they have their own reasons to revolt against Advaita, because the Advaita that they learned was not the Advaita of Shankaracharya. Yesterday I mentioned earlier, Shankaracharya was the first great teacher who said the highest bhakti and the highest jnanam are the same at the experience level. Sri Ramakrishna in 19th century said the same thing. Madhusudana Saraswati, who wrote Gurartha Deepika on Bhagavad Gita in 16th century, he also again reiterates what Shankaracharya taught in 8th century. But in 11th century, Ramanujacharya came. Unfortunately, he was learning Advaita from a teacher who was very similar to Totapuri. Totapuri was a great teacher. But the point is, somebody who was a follower of Shankaracharya making fun of another great spiritual teacher for singing bhajans. Yesterday I may give the example. How can you even conceive of that? As I mentioned, Shankaracharya was making chapatis all his life. You'll be surprised when I tell you the most profound, the most moving devotional poetic classics in Sanskrit language written by Shankaracharya. On every deity, Shiva, Bharadakshama, Brahma, and so on, and Subramanya Bhujangam, on Mother Saudari Lekari, Ananda Lekari, Shiva, again, Shiva, Chadursashti Bhajara Puja Stotram. It is Stotram, Matru Panchakam, like that, Bhavani Ashtakam. All these great moving devotion, even if you play in your computer, you'll be transported to a different realm spiritually. That's the power and the glory and the spirituality of Shankaracharya's bhakti songs, devotional songs. So, such a Shankaracharya was misunderstood by Ramanuja. I shall give an example, not only modern time, but even in the 11th century. Ramanuja was learning Advaita, he was learning Chandogya Upanishad from Yadava Prakasha, who has written some books on Advaita which are not exactly according to the teachings of Shankara, slightly different, not following the actual footprints of Shankaracharya's teachings. So Ramanuja was learning the Chandogya Upanishad, and there was a description, and his teacher, he was a dry intellectual. If somebody interprets Advaita as dry intellectualism, you won't be very pleased, you won't be very happy about it. Actually, if you are given a piece of bone without any flesh, you can't have any nourishment. I'm giving an example from meat-eating tradition. I don't belong to that tradition at all. I can't go anywhere near that. But the point is something like that. The dry bones of Advaita, dry intellectualism. Brahman is Satyam, Brahma is only reality, world is absolutely unreal. This is a total misrepresentation of Advaita. So what happened was, just like Totapuri in 19th century, Yadav Prakasha wrote, he taught Ramanuja Advaita. The result was Ramanuja straightly revolted and he established this Visit Advaita philosophy. So Ramanuja raises some objections about Advaita. I'm going to discuss this because that brings into light some of the important misconceptions about Advaita. So Ramanuja gave what he called Saptavida Anubhavattivada, 7 untenables, 7 logically incomprehensible points in Shankara's Advaita. 7 objections called Asraya Anubhavati, Tirodhana Anubhavati, Anirvachaniya Anubhavati, Pramana Anubhavati, Nivartaka Anubhavati, Nivritti Anubhavati, Suruva Anubhavati. Anubhavati means Anupapatti. Upapatti means logically tenable. Anubhavati means logically untenable. Logically not defensible. There are 7 objections according to Ramanuja in Advaita philosophy. What are the 7 objections? I don't want to go details, there's no time. First of all, it's idea that the avidya, he's talking about avidya. Avidya is beyond definition. Avidya will disappear when you attain spiritual knowledge, and avidya will completely cease to exist. And so all these are 7 objections. The main point of Ramanuja's objection was this: Ramanuja misunderstood or misrepresented avidya, maya or mithya as asat. Technically speaking, I shall explain this. So asat means that's something that cannot even conceived of. Classical example is Vandhya Putra, the son of a barren woman. It's cold examples, old books. The horn of a hare. If the hare, there can be horns. Akasha Nagara, a city in the sky. These are some of the ideas. To give an example, something that cancels itself. If somebody tells you that there is a city but it is in the sky, it means that is not a city, that's only cloud. If there is a city that is not on the sky, it is right in front of us on this earth. So the very word itself cancels its own logical existence. When something is said, it cancels itself. Now, Ramanuja said Advaita's doctrine of Jagat Mithyatvam, Advaita idea of that world is mithya, it means the world doesn't exist at all. Just like the city in the sky does not exist. You cannot even think of that intellectually. If you may utter that, you'll be certified by a psychiatrist. If you say there is a sky, there is a city in the sky, Akasha Kusuma, there is a flower up in the sky, the word itself denies its own possibility. It doesn't exist at all. It cannot be thought of, it cannot be even conceived of. Now, Ramanuja said, when Shankaracharya taught that the world is mithya, world is maya, he was saying that this world doesn't exist at all. So Ramanuja interpreted Shankara's maya, avidya, mithya, etc. as asat, absolute non-existence, something that cannot be even thought of, cannot be even conceived of. Now, this is one common misunderstanding. Everywhere you can find this wrong notion. Advaita tells you the world doesn't exist. No, that is again a great mistake. The second important mistake is the concept of Pradibhasi and Vyavakharika. I shall finish now and then I shall open for questions. Just a few minutes more. I mentioned earlier there are 4 levels of looking at reality in Advaita. One is the highest Paramarthika, the other is Vyavakharika, the empirical, what you see around, which exists but not for all time. It's changing all the time. The third is conceptual reality. The example is, suppose there is a semi-dark room, there's not enough light, there's a piece of rope lying on the floor. We mistake the rope for a snake. There are three other things: Bhuchidra, Jaladhara, Danda, etc. You mistake that rope for a snake. Okay, now you bring light, then immediately that misunderstanding disappears. Now, the point is that Sarpa, the snake, was not there in that room, but it was there in your mind because you have seen a snake sometime in the past in a zoo or on the forest, and that memory is this Smriti Rupa. That memory you superimpose on the rope in front of you because the rope, its color, the way its curved shape, all resembled the snake that you saw in the forest yesterday. The memory superimposed. That is conceptual, pradibhasika, conceptual in your mind. The other one is asat, which cannot even be thought about. So these are four levels. What happened was, in modern times, when we read books or when you learn from teachers who have not read from his teacher, who has not read from his teacher, who doesn't belong to this parambara, and Shankaracharya gives a strong warning. He says, be very careful when you learn this Advaita philosophy from somebody who has not learned from the traditional teacher or who doesn't have the experience. Look at Latu Maharaj. Latu Maharaj did not study Vedanta or Sanskrit Bhashya from anywhere. But Latu Maharaj was born with the samskara. When you are born with the samskara, then a guru, one word is enough for you, to realize the truth. You must have already have accumulated a lot of samskaras in the past life. Must be ready for it. Then you will not make a mistake. That's very important. Sri Ramakrishna was living in the world of spirituality. For him, one Upadesha Mahavakya, Tattwamasi, was enough to produce Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti. The same thing happened to Shankaracharya when Govinda Bhagapada gave him instruction, immediately became experience in Omkareshwar. So that's a different story. The point is, in modern times, there's a great misunderstanding with regard to what is conceptual and what is empirical. The rope is an empirical thing. The snake is only conceptual thing. But the flower in the sky, Akasha Kusuma, the Akasha Nagari is only a wrong, self-cancelling construct. It cancels itself. If somebody tells you there's a city up in the sky, that person obviously he is cancelling its own reality. If it is a city, it will not be in the sky. If there's a city, it will be on earth, not in the sky. So the word itself, the construction itself, is self-cancelling. What happened was, very often in modern times, many people always mistake Shankaracharya's Advaita as some kind of a totally nihilist, world-negating, life-negating, dry intellectualism. That's why Shankaracharya says Advaita is essentially a matter of inner experience and not a philosophical construct. Philosophical ideas are very important only to prepare our mind for starting the spiritual journey. Okay, I have tried to give a bird view. Now I think we have interaction. That time I tried to explain. Yeah. Most welcome. You are most welcome. Yeah.
Anyone has any question? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Hey,
Yeah.
Amit. Yes, quick, no time. It's 5 minutes we have.
Yeah. Please ask. Please ask. Yeah.
I'm a little confused about one thing.
Yeah.
Like an ignorant person, I'm asking this. You're saying that Brahman is beyond word, beyond description, beyond everything.
Yes.
Conception, everything.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're saying we need everything supported by Brahman. What is the Brahman about this? Like an ignorant person, I'm asking this. I'm a little confused.
No problem.
What is a pramana?
Okay.
Give back the mic.
So what it means is this. Essentially we should know, and I shall begin answering this question one statement. your doubts will completely disappear only when you get experience. At the same time, I shall discuss the subject. You know what it means is, when we start our spiritual journey and when we develop the disciplines, nitya, nitya vastu, vega, ihamatra, all these spiritual qualities which are needed for beginning our spiritual journey in Advaita, what happens is eventually our own mind will give answer all these questions. But at the same time, we should keep in mind, philosophically speaking, let us think of the illustration I gave, that the rope and snake. Where was the rope and where was the snake? The same rope was mistaken to be a snake when there was not enough light. When the light came in, what happened was the snake did not disappear, because the snake was something in your mind and that you superimpose on what was in front of you. The snake did not disappear. Similarly, when a person becomes Jivan Mukta, when a person becomes a spiritual enlightened person in Advaita, what happens is he continues to see the same world as non-different from Brahman. This is a very important point, because when you bring light, what you earlier mistook to be the snake is now perceived to be the rope.
Snake is an illusion.
Snake is only in our mind, illusion. So this is very similarly, a Jivan Mukta lives the same world, sees everything, but at the same time he doesn't see this world the way an ignorant man sees the world. For a normal person, when he gets in practical life, when he gets information from his doctor, he has a health problem, he'll collapse. Or when a billionaire gets information he has lost $1 billion at the bank, he'll be shocked for him. Now, a Janaka, who was an emperor, who had billions of trillions of dollars he had, he never worried. But it doesn't mean that he neglected his finances. He was taking care of the requirements, all his administrative responsibilities, but he never wavered, because for him everything is seen to be the same thing. The world is Brahman for a Jivan Mukta. The world is world for a person who has not attained Jivan Mukta. I shall complete this by saying, Swami Turiyananda ji, when he passed away, he wanted his disciples around him to repeat Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam. So, Jagat is Satyam, not as Nama Rupa Atmakam Jagat, but something that is non-distinct from Brahman, it is Satyam. Jagat is Mithya only as Nama Rupa Atmakam. But Nama Rupa are coming and going, they are impermanent. But Nama Rupas are superimposed on Brahman, then you see this Jagat. When you remove Nama Rupa from the Jagat, it is Brahman. When you remove Sarpa Buddhi from the rope, it is seen as rope, a Rajju. Similarly, when you superimpose Sarpa Buddhi on Rajju, it is seen as Sarpa. The world is Brahman only. There is nothing to deny, nothing to remove. The point is, we mistake the world to be different from Brahman. Just like, for example, when you go to a jewelry shop, you are seeing different ornaments in the jewelry shop. But for jewelry, the shopkeeper, it's all the same gold. But for us, we think in terms of workmanship, the other important things associated with the construction, with the construction of these ornaments. So we think this ring, this necklace, this something else, but actually the only same rope. So Jivan Mukta is like a jewelry shopkeeper who sees everything as gold only. A pot maker, for him, a clay pot, a clay jar, a huge utensil made of clay are the same clay. But when we go there, we see them as different, because we use the jar for storing water. We may use the clay pot for some other purpose. So, Vyavaharika Buddhi, Prayogi Buddhi is called in Sanskrit. Because of utility value, we may see the distinctions, but utility values are only in terms of Nama and Rupa. Is it clear to you?
Thank you. Very, very clear. Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Muhormuhu. We had 2 days of remarkable spiritual feast, I should say, Bandara. And the 2 totally divergent views of spiritual life. ইশাত মানজি খুবই আমাদের মতন যেন বাচ্চা ছেলেদের যেরকম বোঝানো হয় ওরকম বোঝাচ্ছিলেন। Maharaj suddenly took us to the level of PhD. That's also necessary. See, এগুলো শুনতে হয়তো একটু কষ্ট লাগে, কিন্তু শুনতে হবে, শুনতে শুনতে অভ্যাস হবে। যখন আমরা শাস্ত্রীয় সঙ্গীত প্রথম শুনি কি ভালো লাগে, কি আ উ করছে, কিন্তু আর একবার রুচি রস পেয়ে গেলে ঘন্টা পর ঘন্টা শুনতে পারি। এইসব জিনিসগুলো যত আমরা শুনবো না কেন, আমাদের সংস্কার নেই তো, সমস্ত এই সহজ, এভরিথিং ইজ মেড ইজি, কুইক ফিক্স ওই জগৎ হয়ে গেছে। ওই জন্য একবারে কোনো তারপরে অ্যাটেনশন দিয়ে নজর দিয়ে একাগ্র হয়ে শোনার অভ্যাসই নেই তো আমাদের। ওই জন্য এগুলো কেউ কেউ ঘুমিয়ে পড়ছে। ঠিক আছে, মা বললেন আমার ছেলেরা ঘুমিয়ে বাঁচবে, ঘুমিয়ে বাঁচুক, কিন্তু শুনলে দেখবেন যারা মন দিয়ে শুনেছে, I could see the reaction, এত they enjoyed it so much because Maharaj talked so beautifully and he made some very important clarifications about the misconceptions regarding Advaita. কেননা সর্বপ্রধানের জন্য একজন, উনিও এক ধরনের বহুতই শিক্ষিত পণ্ডিত গোচর মহিলা, বিশাল একটা নোট আমাকে লিখে পাঠিয়েছেন, আপনি ওই জায়গাতে জগৎ ব্রহ্মসত্য জগৎ মিথ্যা করে শেষ করেছিলেন, কিন্তু শঙ্করাচার্য ভাষ্যতে এই বলেছে করে উনি বিশাল নোট ওনাকে পাঠিয়েছেন। কাজে একটু শব্দ এদিক ওদিক হলেও যারা জানে বুঝে তাদের। কিন্তু আমাদের মোট কথা হলো আমরা দুটো থেকেই আমরা খুবই লাভান্বিত হলাম। সেটাও শুনে আমাদের যারা আমাদের মতন, কেননা আমাদের সকালেই এরকম পড়াশোনা করে আসে তা না, প্রায় 2 দিন সময় বার করে আসতে পেরেছে, কেউ নয়ডাতে, কেউ কলকাতা থেকে, ফরিদাবাদ থেকে, অনেক দূর দূর থেকে এসে, দ্বারকার থেকে, হ্যাঁ, কাজে ওদের সবাই 2 দিন থাকতে পেরেছে, সেই ভালো। এগুলোকে নিয়ে গিয়ে আমার ঠাকুর যেরকম বলছেন আবার ফেরত গিয়ে বাড়িতে গিয়ে চিন্তা করা, আগামী বছর আবার এখান থেকে এগিয়ে যেতে হবে, আবার মহারাজ আপনি কি বললেন সেটা বললে হবে না। হ্যাঁ, কেননা দেখুন আমাদের রামকৃষ্ণ মঠ মিশন, আমাদের পরম্পরায় বেশি বক্তৃতার বেশি আদর নেই, কাদর নেই। এই স্বামীজির পরে বেশ কয়েক বছর রঙ্গনাথনজি নামই আমরা চালিতাম, যখনই যে কোনো হয় রঙ্গনাথনজি। এখন একটু স্বরূপ্রিয়ানজি গুজে উঠেছেন, ভালো বললেন, নো ডাউট। কিন্তু এই একবার মাধবানজিকে কেউ বললো ঋষি অরবিন্দ সম্বন্ধে, কি বলছো, যাও মাংস গিয়ে দেখো, জুড়ি জুড়ি পাবে এরকম না। আমাদের সময় আমাদের আমরা তো বয়স অনেক যথেষ্ট হয়েছে, 50 বছর হতে চলেছে মিশনে, আমরা দেখেছি কি ধরনের সাধু। নিত্যবোধান জীবন যে কানসাল যে প্রতিষ্ঠা করেছেন, ওনার তখন 80-র উপর বয়স, কালী পূজার সংকল্পই বসলেন, হোমের পরে উঠলেন, চিন্তা করা যায় 80-র উপরে বয়স। অতএব আমাদের মিশনের, আমাদের ঐতিহ্য, বিশেষতা, পরম্পরা সব হচ্ছে সাধনশীল হতে হবে। কিন্তু সাধনা করেই সব পেয়ে যাবো তাই নয়, সাধন করে জানবার জন্যে সাধন দ্বারা তিনি লভ্য নন। মাও তার অনেক কথার মধ্যে সাধনার সম্বন্ধে অনেক কিছু বলছেন, ঘড়ির কাটার মতন জপ করবে, অনেক কিছু বললেন। শেষে বলছেন অনেকগুলোর মধ্যে তার কৃপা ছাড়া পাওয়া যাবে না বলছেন। আমরা এই 2 দিনের মহাপুরুষ মহারাজের শিবানন্দ বাণী কিছু আলোচনা করার কথা ছিল, কিন্তু মহারাজের সময় কম বলে আমি বললাম না মহারাজ আপনারটা নিয়ে নিন, আপনার জন্য অনেক দূর দূর থেকে এসছে, আমরা তো ঘর কা মুরগি ডাল বরাবর, আমরা তো অনেক সময় শুনতে পারি, অসুবিধে নেই। কিন্তু একটা ছোট্ট আপনাকে করছি, একদিন বাইরে থেকে একজন সাধু এসছেন, উনি আগের দিন মাসমশাইয়ের সঙ্গে দেখা করে এসেছেন। সে মহাপুরুষ মহারাজ বলছেন, মহারাজ ওনার সঙ্গে দেখা করলাম। এই কথা হতে হতে উনি মহারাজকে বলছেন, মহারাজ মনে মহা অশান্তি, সাধন পর্যন্ত কিছুই করতে পারলাম না, এদিকে দিন তো বয়ে যাচ্ছে, আমাদের উপায় কি হবে? আমাদের সকলেই হয়তো মহারাজ কাছে উনি জিজ্ঞেস করছেন। মহারাজ বলছেন, বাবা শরণাগত হয়ে পড়ে থাকো, তার কৃপা না হলে কিছুই হবার নাই। জপ ধ্যান করে কি তাকে ধরতে পাবে মানুষ? তিনি যদি দয়া না করেন, দয়া করে ধরা না দেন, তাহলে সম্ভব নয়, আর তাকে পাবার জো নেই। কার সাধ্য যে তাকে ধরবে? সাধন ভজন মানুষ কতক্ষণ করবে? 2 ঘন্টা, 4 ঘন্টা, কি আর 8-10 ঘন্টা? আর সেই সাধনার প্রবৃত্তি তিনিই দেন। সব শক্তি আধার যে তিনি, তার দয়া না হলে, তিনি শক্তি না দিলে কি করে সাধন ভজন করবে? তাই বলছি, শরণাগত হয়ে পড়ে থাকো আর কাতরভাবে প্রার্থনা করো, প্রভু কৃপা করো, কৃপা করো, তবেই তিনি কৃপা করবেন। কৃপা কৃপা কৃপা। ঠাকুর বলতেন, তুমি তোমার, আমি আমার নয়। আমরা কি করতে পারি? তিনি যদি দয়া করে না ধরা দেন, দয়া দয়া করো প্রভু। সাধুটি চাটছে না, প্রার্থনা যে করতে পারছি না মহারাজ, চঞ্চল মন, সবসময় মন স্থির হয় না। না, প্রার্থনা হবে, করতে হবে খুব ব্যাকুল হয়ে। মনে নৈরাশ্যের ভাব এনো না, দুঃখ করো না, আনন্দ করো আর প্রার্থনা করো। তিনি সব দেবেন বাবা, সব দেবেন। তোমাদের তার আদেয় কিছুই নেই। ভক্তি বলো, বিশ্বাস বলো, ত্যাগ, পবিত্রতা, বিবেক, বৈরাগ্য সবই তিনি দেবেন। তার যা কিছু ছিল সবই তোমাদের দেবেন। দেবেন বলেই তো তিনি আমাদের জন্য এসেছিলেন, দেবেন বলেই তো তিনি এখানে এনেছেন, আশ্রয় দিয়েছেন, তার আশ্রয় রেখেছেন। এখানে কি তোমরা নিজেরা এসেছো? কখনোই না। এই ভাব মানে একেবারে স্থান দিও না। তিনি কৃপা করে তোমাদের সব টেনে এনেছেন। অহেতুক কৃপা সিন্ধু তিনি। বাবা পড়ে থাকো, সব হবে, কালে সব হবে। আমরা বলছি সব পাবে, ভক্তি বিশ্বাসে পরিপূর্ণ করে দেবেন। এই বলিয়া তিনি গান ধরিলেন, আপনাতে আপনিতে কমো। যে মহাপুরুষ মহারাজকে এরকম একজন এরকম ওই কল্পতরু দিন, ওই দিন দেখা হলো, মহারাজ এই দিন তো ঠাকুর কল্পতরু হয়েছিলেন, এইসব কথা হচ্ছে। উনি তো মহারাজ ইচ্ছা করলে সবাইকে মুক্ত করে দিতে পারতেন। উনি তাহলে কৃপা সিন্ধু কি করে বলা যায় ওনাকে? তখন বলছেন, কি বলছো? উনি এই জগতে দেহ ধারণ করে এসেছেন, তার থেকে বড় কৃপা কি আছে? তার কি দরকার ছিল, কি প্রয়োজন ছিল? এই জানবে তার সবচেয়ে বড় কৃপা। উনি এখানে এই জগতে যে দেহ ধারণ করে অবতীর্ণ হয়েছিলেন মানুষের কল্যাণের জন্য। এই যে ঠাকুর মা স্বামীজির এই পরম্পরায় আমরা একদিকে খুবই ভাগ্যবান, কেননা আমরা তাদের খুব কাছে এসেছি 100-150 বছরের মধ্যে। একদিকে আমাদের অসুবিধে, আমি অনেক সময় এটা বলি, এটা খুব বড় বিল্ডিংয়ের ঠিক নিচের থেকে তার সৌন্দর্য বা আর্কিটেকচার, কারিগরি সব বোঝা যায় না, একটু দূরে হলে বোঝা যাবে। আমরা যদি এত সহজে এত কাছে এসেছি, তার আমরা কিছু মহিমা আর ধারণ করতে পারছি না। কতটা আমাদের কৃপা, কতটা আমাদের আমাদের ঠাকুর বারবার এটাই বলতেন, সৎসঙ্গ বা সাধু সঙ্গ। সৎসঙ্গ মানে তো সবসময় সাধুকে কোথায় খুঁজে বেড়াবেন, সাধু বা কে ধরনের তো বুঝি না, কিন্তু যারা এরকম ঠাকুর মা স্বামীজির যে ভাবাপন্ন, এই যে পরম্পরায় যারা এসেছে, তাদের পরস্পর আমরা যতটা পারা যায় উৎসাহ দেওয়া, সঙ্গ দেওয়া, তাদের সঙ্গে এই করা, কোনো না কোনোভাবে তাদের সঙ্গে একটা জড়িয়ে থাকা, সেই হচ্ছে আমাদের এতটুকু আমরা করতে পারি। যতটা পারবেন এইসব জিনিস দেখুন, একটা করতে গেলে অনেক পরিশ্রম লাগে। আমাদের সকাল থেকে রাত্রি পর্যন্ত আমাদের ভলেন্টিয়াররা, সাংঘাতিক মহারাজরা দৌড়াদৌড়ি করছে, তাতে আপনাদের কোনো অসুবিধা হয়, কার টিফিন হয়েছে কিনা, কার ব্রেকফাস্ট হয়েছে কিনা, লাঞ্চ খেয়েছে কিনা, সব কিছু। এই জন্যে এইসব সুযোগ সুবিধাগুলোকে নিশ্চয়ই সবসময় গ্রহণ করবেন। অনেকে ভাবে আজকে এসছে, হয়তো 3 দিন আসবে না, কেন এসে গেছে, কোনো সর্দি লেগে যাবে না, জ্বর হবে না পরের দিন আসলে, যখনই আসতে হয় আসতে হবে। মানুষ সেখান থেকে তো আমেরিকা নেই, আমি যে কলকাতা মারা দূর, আমি কি কোথায়, তোমরা কি ইউরোপ আমেরিকা থেকে আসছে নাকি, ওখান থেকে এখানে আসছে নাকি, দূর দূর তো হবে কিছুটা তো। দেখুন কোনো বিনা কষ্ট পরিশ্রম পেলে কোনোটাই আমরা মূল্য বুঝতেই পারবো না। এখানে গুরগাঁও যারা সবচেয়ে কাছে থাকে তারা কম আসে, ওরা বলছে কালকে যাবো পরশু যাবো, কাছেই আছে, আর আসাই হয় না। এই জন্যই মানে সব কিছুতেই একটা নিয়ম নিষ্ঠা করে না করলে কোনো জিনিস হবে না। আরও বলছি আপনাদের, আবার 29-30 আরও দুদিনের রিট্রিট আমরা আয়োজন করছি, সেখানে তিনজন, ওরা শুধু সাধনা নিয়ে বলবে। সর্বস্থানজি উনি লন্ডন থেকে আসছেন, আত্মজ্ঞানজি ব্রাজিল থেকে আসছেন, আত্মজ্ঞানানজি উনি ওয়াশিংটন ডিসি থেকে আসছেন। তিনটা সেশন, দুদিন সাধনা নিয়ে। সর্বস্থানজি বলবেন রামকৃষ্ণ মঠ মিশনের উপাসনার কি তার বিশেষতা এবং উপাসনার সম্বন্ধেই বলবেন দ্বিতীয় দিন। আর আত্মজ্ঞানজি বলবেন ভক্তি পথে সাধনা, জ্ঞান পথে। আর স্টুয়ার্ট মহারাজ আত্মজ্ঞানানন্দজি বলবেন দ্য ফ্রুটস অফ মেডিটেশন। কাজে আবার যারা যারা এখনো করেনি না, আরও বোধহয় 20-25টা সিট আছে। তো সেখানে আবার শুধু দুপুরে প্রসাদ আর সকাল বিকেলে চা আছে, ব্রেকফাস্টের ব্যবস্থা নেই। কাজে সবাই রেজিস্টার করুন, যতটা পারবেন আশ্রমে আসবেন। এই দুদিনেরটা খুব ভালো হলো, আপনারাও খুব মন দিয়ে শুনেছেন আর খুবই সবারই ভালো লেগেছে। আমরা এই জন্য দুজন মহারাজরা, ঈশাত মহারাজকে বললাম, উনি এত ক্লান্ত বোধহয় এখন আসতে পারেননি, এসে গেছেন। দেখুন ঈশাত মহারাজজি খুবই মানে, দেখুন উনি পরশু দিন বম্বেতে উনি একদিনও সময় পাননি, মানে শিকাগোতে আসা মানে বোধহয় মিনিমাম 17-18 ঘন্টা বা 20 ঘন্টা ফ্লাইট হয়েছে, বোধহয় 8 ঘন্টা লন্ডনের ওনার ওয়েটিং ছিল। আচ্ছা এখনো ওনার জেট ল্যাগে কেটে উঠিনি, এর মধ্যে উনি দুদিন এখানে করেছেন। মহারাজকে কালকেই রাত্রি আবার 18-20 ঘন্টা ট্রাভেল করে স্যান ফ্রান্সিসকো যেতে হবে। কিন্তু উনি প্রতিবার ইন্ডিয়াতে আসলেই আমাদের আশ্রমে আসেন, আমার এই আশ্রমকে ভালোবাসেন, বক্তৃতা দেন। দুজনকে আমরা আমাদের শ্রদ্ধাঞ্জলি, শ্রদ্ধা, আমাদের ভালোবাসা সব জানাই। আর আপনাদের তরফ থেকে ওদের দুজনকে অশেষ ধন্যবাদ। যখনই ওরা আসেন যেন এখানে এই আশ্রমে আসেন, ভক্তদের এভাবে কিছু বলে উদ্বুদ্ধ করেন, আধ্যাত্মিক জীবন সম্বন্ধে কিছু উপদেশ দেন। শ্রীরামকৃষ্ণ অর্পণমস্তু। এখন আমাদের ওনাকে একটা ছোট্ট আমাদের উপহার আমাদের তরফ থেকে, আর তারপরে রামকৃষ্ণ শরণম আর চা, তারপরে প্রায় যাবে। মহারাজ